The transport ship shuddered as it broke through Zirian's atmosphere. Ambassador Ben Reed gripped the armrest of his seat and watched through the small window as the alien world came into view. Purple skies stretched endlessly above silver cities that sparkled like jewels. Towering spires reached toward 3 moons hanging in the distance. After 6 months of space travel, Ben had finally arrived at humanity's most important diplomatic mission. "First time seeing Zirian?" asked Captain Torres from the pilot's seat. The older woman had been making these runs for 5 years now. "Yes," Ben replied, unable to hide his amazement. "The pictures didn't do it justice. Wait until you meet the Zirians themselves. They're quite something." Ben nodded and checked his tablet one more time. The mission briefing was simple on paper but complex in reality. The Void Swarm, a collection of spaceborne creatures that consumed entire planets, was moving toward both Earth and Zirian. Humanity had developed new shield technology that could protect against the creatures. Zirian had powerful weapons that could destroy them. Neither world could survive alone. The problem was trust. Humans and Zirians had only made contact 3 years ago. Most communication had been through long-distance messages and trade agreements. This would be the first time a human had actually lived on Zirian for an extended period. The ship landed with a soft thump on the royal spaceport. Ben gathered his belongings and followed Captain Torres to the exit ramp. The moment the doors opened, he felt the difference. The air was thinner but breathable. Gravity felt lighter, making each step feel like a small bounce. The smell reminded him of rain on metal. A group of tall figures waited at the bottom of the ramp. Ben had seen pictures of Zirians, but meeting them in person was different. They stood nearly 7 feet tall with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in the purple light. Their eyes were larger than human eyes and completely silver. They wore flowing robes in deep colors, royal blue, emerald green, and rich purple. The figure in the center stepped forward. "Ambassador Reed, welcome to Zirian. I am Minister Drac, advisor to His Imperial Majesty Emperor Voss." Ben walked down the ramp and offered his hand in the human greeting. Minister Drac looked at it for a moment before extending his own hand. The Zirian's skin felt cool and slightly rough, like touching smooth stone. "Thank you for the warm welcome, Minister Drac. Earth is honored by this opportunity. The honor is ours. Please, follow us. The Emperor is eager to meet you." They walked through the spaceport toward a line of floating vehicles. Ben tried not to stare too obviously at everything around him. Zirian architecture was unlike anything on Earth. Buildings curved and twisted in impossible ways, held up by what looked like pure energy. Citizens moved past them, some floating a few inches off the ground, others walking normally. All of them stopped to stare at Ben. "They're curious about you," Minister Drac explained as they climbed into the largest vehicle. "Most have never seen a human before." "I understand. I'm curious about them too." The vehicle lifted smoothly into the air and began moving toward the palace complex in the distance. The royal palace of Zirian was massive, built into the side of a mountain that glowed with internal light. Spires and towers jutted out at every level, connected by bridges that seemed to be made of solid light. "Emperor Voss has ruled for over 200 years, Minister Drac said as they flew. He has guided Zirian through many challenges. The Void Swarm represents the greatest threat we have ever faced. Earth feels the same way. Our scientists believe the swarm will reach our solar system within 2 years. Then we must work quickly." The vehicle landed on a platform halfway up the mountain palace. Guards in silver armor escorted them through corridors filled with floating crystals that provided light. Everything was larger than human scale, designed for the taller Zirian people. Ben felt small but tried to project confidence. They entered a vast throne room with a ceiling that seemed to stretch into space itself. Stars twinkled overhead, though Ben suspected they might be artificial. At the far end sat Emperor Voss on a throne that appeared to be carved from a single massive diamond. The Emperor was older than the other Zirians Ben had met, with skin that had faded to almost white. His silver eyes held wisdom and weariness in equal measure. As Ben approached, he stood and stepped down from the throne. "Ambassador Reed of Earth, you are welcome in our realm. I am Emperor Voss, guardian of Zirion and protector of the outer spiral." Ben bowed in the formal style he had practiced. "Your Majesty, I bring greetings from Earth and President Chen. We are grateful for this opportunity to discuss our mutual defense." "Indeed. The Void Swarm threatens us all. Please, let us speak of these matters in more comfort." They moved to a smaller chamber with chairs sized for both humans and Zirions. Emperor Voss began explaining the full scope of the threat. The Void Swarm had already consumed 12 star systems. Their creatures could survive in space and move faster than most ships. They ate everything: metal, organic matter, even energy itself. "Our weapons can destroy individual creatures," the Emperor said. "But they travel in groups of thousands. Your shield technology could protect our ships long enough to engage them effectively." "Our shields are strong," Ben agreed. "But we need weapons that can reach them at long range. Earth's military is not equipped for space warfare on this scale." They talked for several hours about technical details, fleet movements, and strategic planning. Ben began to feel hopeful. The Emperor seemed genuinely committed to working together. But as the meeting progressed, Ben noticed something troubling. Several of the Zirion military advisors who joined them spoke about humans in dismissive ways when they thought Ben couldn't hear them. "The small ones might be useful," one whispered to another. "Once we understand their technology. If they prove too difficult, we can handle the swarm ourselves," another replied. Ben pretended not to notice, but he filed the comments away for later consideration. As the formal meetings concluded, Emperor Voss made an unexpected announcement. "Ambassador Reed, there is one more matter we must discuss. Zirion culture places great importance on bonds of trust between peoples. For our alliance to have the deepest meaning, we would ask you to consider a traditional bonding ceremony with a member of our royal family." Ben blinked in surprise. "I'm not sure I understand, Your Majesty." "A marriage bond, in your terms. It would symbolize the permanent joining of our peoples. Of course, such a decision is yours to make freely. There would be no political pressure." The room fell silent. Ben felt the weight of every eye upon him. This was not something Earth's government had prepared him for. Marriage to an alien was far beyond his mission parameters. "This is quite unexpected, Your Majesty. Might I ask who you would propose for such a bonding?" Emperor Voss smiled for the first time since Ben had arrived. "My daughter, Princess Kira. She is intelligent, strong, and has expressed interest in learning about human culture. But again, this is merely a proposal. You should meet her first before making any decision." Ben's mind raced. A political marriage might indeed seal the alliance in a way that no treaty could. But it would also tie him to Zirion permanently, and he wasn't sure what Earth's response would be. "I would be honored to meet the princess, Your Majesty. Though I cannot make such an important decision without careful thought." "Of course. Kira will join us for the evening meal. You may speak with her and form your own judgment." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of palace tours and cultural briefings. Minister Drac showed Ben to his quarters, a spacious suite with a balcony overlooking the city. The furniture was adjustable to accommodate his human size, and the room had been stocked with foods that were safe for human consumption. As evening approached, Ben dressed in his formal diplomatic attire and tried to prepare himself for meeting the princess. He had no idea what to expect. The few images he had seen of Zirion royalty showed them as tall, elegant, and somewhat intimidating. A servant came to escort him to the dining hall just as the first moon was rising. The hall was smaller than the throne room but still grand, with a table that could seat 50 people. Tonight, only 5 chairs were occupied. Emperor Voss sat at the head, with Minister Drac to his right. Ben was seated to the Emperor's left. Ambassador Reed, Emperor Voss said as Ben took his seat, "May I present my daughter, Princess Kira?" Ben looked up and felt his breath catch. Princess Kira was tall like all Zirians, but she moved with a grace that reminded him of a dancer. Her blue skin had a warmer tone than the others he had met, and her silver eyes held curiosity rather than the cool distance he had grown used to. She wore a simple gown of deep green that seemed to shift colors as she moved. "Princess Kira, this is Ambassador Ben Reed of Earth." She inclined her head politely. "Ambassador Reed, welcome to our world. I hope your journey was comfortable." "Thank you, Your Highness. The journey was long but worthwhile. Your world is beautiful." "You are kind to say so. I admit, I am very curious about your world as well. We have received many reports, but I imagine they cannot capture the full reality of Earth." As the meal progressed, Ben found himself genuinely enjoying the conversation. Princess Kira asked thoughtful questions about human culture, technology, and art. She seemed particularly interested in Earth's diverse ecosystems and the way different human societies had developed. "On Zirian, our people are much more uniform," she explained. "We have different regions and cities, but the cultural variations are small compared to what I hear about Earth." "How do you manage to unite so many different peoples?" "It's not always easy," Ben admitted. "We have our conflicts and disagreements. But when facing a threat like the Void Swarm, we tend to remember what we have in common." "That is wisdom," Emperor Voss noted approvingly. As the evening wore on, Ben realized that Princess Kira was not only intelligent and gracious, but also funny. She made gentle jokes about Zirian customs that Ben found confusing, and she seemed genuinely delighted when he shared stories about human traditions. When the meal ended, Princess Kira asked if Ben would like to see the palace gardens. Emperor Voss nodded his approval, and they walked out into the night air together. The gardens were unlike anything Ben had ever seen. Plants with crystalline leaves caught and reflected the moonlight. Flowers that seemed to be made of living light pulsed gently in the darkness. Small streams of luminous water wound between the pathways. "This is incredible," Ben said, stopping beside a fountain that sparkled with its own inner fire. "These gardens have been cultivated for over 1,000 years, Princess Kira said. Each emperor adds something new. My contribution will be that grove over there." She pointed to a section where young trees with silver bark grew in perfect spirals. "What made you choose those trees?" "They represent hope and new beginnings. I planted them when I first learned about the Void Swarm. I wanted to create something beautiful that would outlast the coming darkness." Ben looked at her with new understanding. "You're not just concerned about the political alliance. You're genuinely worried about what's coming." "Of course. The swarm doesn't care about politics or treaties. It simply consumes. If we cannot stop it, everything we have built will be gone." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the alien world. Finally, Princess Kira spoke again. "My father has proposed a bonding between us. I want you to know that whatever you decide, I will respect your choice. This must be your decision, not something forced by duty." Ben appreciated her directness. "And what are your feelings about the proposal?" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I find you interesting, Ambassador Reed. You treat me as a person, not just a title. You listen when I speak, and you seem to value my thoughts. Those are rare qualities. You can call me Ben, if you'd like." "Ben." She smiled, and for the first time, her expression seemed completely natural rather than diplomatically careful. "I would like to know you better, Ben. Whether that leads to a bonding ceremony or simply a strong friendship, I believe it would benefit both our peoples." They talked for another hour before returning to the palace. Ben's head was spinning with everything he had learned and experienced. As he prepared for sleep in his guest quarters, he found himself thinking not about political advantages or strategic alliances, but about the way Princess Kira's eyes had sparkled when she laughed at his stories about Earth animals. The next morning brought new meetings and new challenges. But for the first time since arriving on Zirian, Ben felt that this mission might succeed not just as a political necessity, but as something more meaningful. The connection between him and Princess Kira seemed genuine, and that gave him hope for the alliance between their worlds. However, he couldn't shake the memory of those whispered conversations among the Zirian military advisors. Some of them clearly had their own plans for humanity's technology. As he prepared for another day of negotiations, Ben wondered if he was walking into something more complex than a simple alliance. The fate of two worlds might depend on whether love and trust could overcome fear and treachery. 3 weeks had passed since Ben first arrived on Zirian. The days fell into a comfortable pattern of morning meetings about military strategy, afternoon cultural exchanges, and evening walks with Princess Kira through the palace gardens. Each day brought new understanding between the two worlds, but also new concerns. Ben sat in his quarters reviewing the latest reports from Earth. The Void Swarm had accelerated its approach. What had been estimated as 2 years was now 18 months, maybe less. President Chen's messages grew more urgent with each transmission. Earth needed this alliance to work. A soft chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," Ben called. Princess Kira entered carrying a tray with 2 cups of the warm, honey-flavored drink that had become their evening tradition. She had traded her formal gowns for simpler clothes during their private meetings, and Ben found her even more beautiful in the flowing pants and fitted jacket she wore now. "You look troubled," she observed, settling into the chair across from his desk. "The latest reports from Earth. The swarm is moving faster than we predicted." Kira's expression grew serious. "How much time do we have?" 18 months, possibly less. Our scientists think they're drawn to inhabited systems. The more life they consume, the stronger they become. That matches our observations as well. The swarm that destroyed the Kelter system grew significantly after feeding. Kira handed him one of the cups. "There is something else troubling you." Ben hesitated. Over the past weeks, he had grown to trust Kira completely. She was intelligent, compassionate, and genuinely cared about saving both their peoples. But some of her own people seemed to have different ideas about the alliance. "I've been hearing things," Ben said carefully. "Comments from some of your military leaders about humans and our technology." "What kind of comments?" "They speak as if they plan to use our shield technology but abandon Earth when the time comes. General Thek in particular seems to think humans are inferior beings who should be grateful for Zirian protection." Kira's silver eyes flashed with anger. "General Thek has always believed Zirian should stand alone. He opposed the alliance from the beginning. It's more than that. Yesterday I overheard him talking to Commander Rix about extracting what they need from the human technology transfers. They're planning something." Kira set down her cup and leaned forward. "Ben, you must tell my father about this immediately. I can't prove anything yet. It's all whispered conversations and suspicious looks. If I make accusations without evidence, it could destroy the alliance entirely. Then we need to find evidence." Ben looked at her in surprise. "We? Of course. If members of our military are planning to betray Earth, they are betraying Zirian as well. The alliance is our best hope for survival. Without it, we all face destruction." Over the next few days, Ben and Kira worked together to investigate the growing conspiracy. Kira used her royal access to review military communications while Ben observed the behavior of suspicious officers during strategy meetings. What they found was worse than Ben had feared. General Thek had convinced nearly a third of the Zirian fleet commanders that humans were a temporary necessity. His plan was to copy Earth's shield technology, then use it to protect only Zirian worlds while leaving humanity to face the swarm alone. "Look at this communication," Kira said, showing Ben a data tablet in her private chambers. "General Thek is coordinating with off-world commanders. They plan to implement the betrayal once they have complete technical specifications for our shields." Ben read the message with growing horror. The plan was detailed and carefully timed. Zirian would request complete shield technology under the pretense of improving compatibility between their systems. Once they had everything they needed, they would declare the alliance void and retreat to defend only their core worlds. This is treason, Ben said. Yes, it is. But General Thek has convinced his followers that it's patriotism. He argues that Zirian has survived for thousands of years without alien help and shouldn't risk their civilization for primitive humans. Ben felt a flash of anger at the description, but Kira placed a calming hand on his arm. I don't share his views, obviously. I've seen human ingenuity and courage. Your people created shield technology that we never imagined. That takes remarkable intelligence and creativity. Thank you. But the question remains, what do we do about this? Before Kira could answer, another chime sounded at her door. Princess Kira, came a guard's voice. Emperor Voss requests your immediate presence in the strategy room. Ben and Kira exchanged worried looks. They quickly hid the evidence they had gathered and made their way to the strategy room, arriving to find Emperor Voss surrounded by his military advisors. General Thek stood prominently at the Emperor's right side. Ah, Kira, Ben, Emperor Voss said. We were just discussing the timeline for technology transfer. General Thek believes we should accelerate the process. Indeed, General Thek said, his voice smooth and reasonable. The approaching threat requires us to integrate our systems as quickly as possible. I propose that Earth provide complete shield specifications within the next week. Ben felt his heart rate increase. This was happening faster than they had anticipated. General, our engineers will need more time to ensure compatibility. Rushing the process could result in system failures. Surely human technology is not so primitive that it requires extensive modification, General Thek replied with barely concealed condescension. Our technology is different, not primitive, Ben said firmly. It requires careful integration to work with Zirian systems. Of course, Emperor Voss interjected diplomatically. We don't wish to pressure our allies. What timeline would be appropriate, Ben? Ben looked around the room, noting which officers seemed to support General Thek's position. Too many of them. 2 weeks for preliminary specifications. Full integration will take at least a month. Unacceptable, General Thek declared. Every day we delay gives the swarm time to grow stronger. I insist we receive complete specifications immediately. You insist? Ben asked, his voice cooling. General Thek, Emperor Voss said warningly. Ambassador Reed is our honored guest and ally. Of course, Your Majesty. I simply want what's best for Zirian. The meeting continued for another hour, but Ben could barely focus on the strategic discussions. He was thinking about the evidence he and Kira had discovered. General Thek's urgency made sense now. He wanted the technology quickly so he could implement his betrayal before anyone suspected his true intentions. After the meeting ended, Ben found himself walking alone in the palace corridors. He needed time to think about their options. Exposing the conspiracy publicly would cause chaos, but waiting much longer might allow the traitors to succeed. He was so lost in thought that he almost didn't notice the voices coming from a side chamber. But something made him stop and listen. The human technology will be ours within days, General Thek was saying. Once we have their complete shield specifications, we can begin the withdrawal from Earth space. What about the formal alliance? Another voice asked, Commander Rix. A piece of paper. Once we have what we need, we'll find legal justification to void the agreement. The humans are too weak to enforce it anyway. And Princess Kira's bonding ceremony? An unfortunate political necessity that will be corrected once this crisis passes. Zirian royal blood should not be diluted by alien influence. Ben felt his hands clench into fists. They were talking about Kira as if she were a political tool to be discarded when convenient. The Emperor supports the alliance, Commander Rix noted. The Emperor is old and sentimental. He sees friendship where there should be only advantage. When the crisis passes and Zirian stands safe, he will understand the wisdom of our actions. And if he doesn't? There was a long pause. Then new leadership may be necessary for Zirian's future. Ben's blood ran cold. This wasn't just about betraying Earth, it was about overthrowing Emperor Voss if he opposed their plans. Ben backed away from the door as quietly as possible and hurried toward Kira's chambers. He found her in her private study, reviewing star charts that showed the swarm's projected path. She looked up as he entered, and her expression immediately showed concern. "Ben, what's wrong? You look like you've seen death itself." "Worse. I overheard General Thek and Commander Rix. They're not just planning to betray Earth, they're prepared to overthrow your father if he opposes them." Kira's face went pale, her blue skin almost white with shock. "Are you certain?" Ben repeated the conversation word for word. By the time he finished, Kira was standing and pacing, her usual grace replaced by agitated energy. "This is beyond treason. This is an attack on the very foundation of our government. We have to tell your father immediately." "With what proof?" "You overheard a conversation, but we have no recordings, no witnesses. General Thek will simply deny everything and claim you're trying to manipulate the Alliance for Earth's benefit." Ben sank into a chair, feeling the weight of impossible choices. "So what do we do?" Kira stopped pacing and turned to face him. "There is one option. Tomorrow night is the Festival of Unity, our greatest celebration. The entire court will gather in the Grand Hall. If we can expose the conspiracy publicly, with the whole court as witnesses, General Thek won't be able to deny or cover up his actions. How do we expose them without proof? We force them to reveal themselves. If you publicly announce the complete technology transfer they've been demanding, they'll have to show their true intentions. Either they accept and prepare for immediate betrayal, or they reveal their real plans to the court." Ben considered the plan. It was risky, but it might work. "There's one problem. If I expose the conspiracy and they deny it convincingly, it could destroy the Alliance and leave both our peoples defenseless." "Yes," Kira agreed quietly. "But if we do nothing, the Alliance is already doomed. At least this way, we have a chance to save it." They spent the rest of the evening planning exactly what Ben would say and how they would handle different possible responses. As the night grew late, Ben found himself studying Kira's face in the soft crystal light of her chambers. "There's something else I need to tell you," he said. "The bonding ceremony your father proposed, I've made my decision." Kira's expression became carefully neutral. "And what have you decided?" "I want to go through with it. Not for political reasons, but because I've come to care for you deeply. You're brave, intelligent, and honorable. If we survive the coming crisis, I'd like to build a life with you." For the first time since he had known her, Kira seemed completely speechless. Her silver eyes showed a mixture of joy, fear, and uncertainty. "Ben, if tomorrow goes wrong, we might both be exiled or imprisoned. Are you certain you want to tie your fate to mine?" "I've never been more certain of anything." She crossed the room and took his hands in hers. "Then yes. Whatever tomorrow brings, we'll face it together." They sat together in comfortable silence, both knowing that the next day would determine the fate of their worlds and their future together. The Festival of Unity would either celebrate a true alliance between their peoples or mark the beginning of chaos and betrayal. Outside the palace windows, Zirian's 3 moons hung in the purple sky like silver coins, casting their light on a world balanced between hope and destruction. Soon, Ben would have to step into that grand hall and make the most important speech of his life, knowing that every word could save or doom billions of lives. The growing threat of the Void Swarm seemed almost secondary to the immediate danger of civil war and betrayal within the Alliance itself. But Ben had chosen his path, and Princess Kira had chosen to walk it with him. Tomorrow would bring answers, one way or another. The Festival of Unity arrived with fanfare that echoed throughout the palace. Ben stood at his window watching hundreds of Zirian citizens gather in the courtyards below. Floating banners displayed ancient symbols of peace and prosperity. Music drifted up from the celebration grounds, strange but beautiful melodies that seemed to make the very air shimmer. Ben adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform one final time. Tonight, everything would change. Either he would expose the conspiracy and save the alliance, or he would destroy any hope of cooperation between their worlds. His hands trembled slightly as he attached the communication device that would record everything said in the Grand Hall. A gentle knock interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Princess Kira entered, and Ben's breath caught in his throat. She wore a gown of deep silver that seemed to capture and reflect light from every angle. Her hair was arranged in an elaborate style that incorporated small floating crystals. She looked every inch the royal princess, but her eyes showed the same nervousness Ben felt. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. "As ready as I can be." "Are you certain about this plan?" "Yes. The strike of honor is an ancient tradition that even General Thek cannot deny. When performed correctly, it will protect you and expose the traitors." She paused, studying his face. "But Ben, you must understand, the strike will be real. I cannot make it gentle or it will not be recognized as authentic." Ben nodded. "I understand. I trust you completely." Kira crossed the room and took his hands in hers. "Whatever happens tonight, know that my feelings for you are genuine. This began as a political alliance, but it has become something much more important. For me as well." They stood together for a moment, drawing strength from each other. Then Kira stepped back and became the composed princess once again. "It's time. The court will be gathering now." They walked through the palace corridors toward the Grand Hall. Other nobles and officials moved in the same direction, all dressed in their finest clothes. Ben recognized many faces from the past weeks, some friendly, others clearly suspicious of the human ambassador. Tonight, he would learn who truly supported the alliance and who secretly worked against it. The Grand Hall had been transformed for the festival. Floating lights created a canopy of stars overhead. Tables laden with exotic foods lined the walls. Musicians played from floating platforms that drifted slowly through the air. Hundreds of Xyrian nobles filled the vast space, their conversations creating a pleasant hum. Emperor Voss sat on a smaller throne at the head of the hall, wearing robes that seemed to be woven from pure light. General Thek stood prominently beside him, along with other high-ranking military officers. Ben noticed how many of them had positioned themselves close to the emperor, ready to control the situation if needed. "Ladies and gentlemen of the court," Emperor Voss called out, his voice carrying easily through the hall. "Tonight we celebrate unity, the bonds between our people and the alliance we have forged with our friends from Earth. Ambassador Reed has requested permission to address the court." Ben felt every eye in the hall turn toward him as he stepped forward. The conversations died away until the only sounds were the soft music and the distant celebrations from outside. He looked across the sea of faces, some curious, some friendly, some openly hostile. "Your Majesty, honored guests," Ben began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I stand before you tonight as a representative of humanity, grateful for Xyrian's friendship in our darkest hour. The Void Swarm threatens everything we hold dear. Only by working together can we hope to survive." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, but Ben noticed that General Thek and his supporters remained silent. "In the spirit of unity, and in recognition of the urgent threat we face, I am prepared to authorize the immediate transfer of Earth's complete shield technology specifications to Xyrian Military Command." This announcement caused a much stronger reaction. Some nobles applauded enthusiastically, while others looked surprised by the sudden generosity. General Thek's expression remained carefully neutral, but Ben saw the flash of satisfaction in his eyes. Furthermore, Ben continued, "Earth is prepared to place our entire defensive fleet under joint command with Xyrian forces, trusting in our alliance to protect both our peoples." Now even Emperor Voss looked surprised. This went far beyond what had been previously discussed. General Thek stepped forward. "This is most generous, Ambassador Reed. I'm sure all of Zirian appreciates humanity's trust in our military leadership. His voice carried subtle emphasis on the words, our military leadership. However, Ben said, his voice growing stronger, this trust must be mutual. I have learned that some among you do not share Emperor Voss's commitment to our alliance. Some plan to take our technology and abandon Earth to face the swarm alone. The hall erupted in shocked gasps and angry voices. General Thek's face went through several expressions before settling on righteous indignation. This is outrageous, General Thek declared loudly. How dare you accuse loyal Zirian officers of treachery? This is clearly a human attempt to manipulate our alliance for your own benefit. Is it? Ben asked calmly. He activated his communication device and projected his voice to fill the entire hall. Then perhaps you can explain your private communications about extracting what you need from human technology. Or your discussions about voiding the alliance once you have our shield specifications. I have no idea what you're talking about, General Thek replied smoothly. These are desperate lies from someone who knows his inferior people need our protection. Inferior people? Ben repeated. Is that how you really see humanity? As inferior beings to be used and discarded? I see humanity as a temporary necessity, General Thek said, his composure finally cracking. Zirian has survived for millennia without alien assistance. We should not risk our civilization for primitive creatures who barely understand the forces they're dealing with. The hall erupted in chaos as nobles took sides. Some shouted support for General Thek's position, while others demanded respect for the alliance. Emperor Voss stood from his throne, trying to restore order. Enough, the Emperor commanded. General Thek, explain yourself. Do you or do you not support our alliance with Earth? General Thek looked around the hall, measuring the support on both sides. Ben could see him calculating whether he had enough backing to make his move. Your Majesty, General Thek said formally, I believe Zirian's interests come before all other considerations. If that means using human technology to protect our people while leaving Earth to face their own destiny, then that is what we must do. Gasps echoed through the hall. Several military officers moved to stand beside General Thek, while others remained near the Emperor. The court was dividing into two armed camps right before Ben's eyes. General Thek, Emperor Voss said, his voice cold with authority, you have just admitted to planning treason against this crown and betrayal of our sworn allies. Explain yourself immediately. I explain myself to no one, General Thek declared. Zirian needs new leadership that puts our survival above sentimental attachments to alien creatures. The hall fell silent as everyone realized what had just happened. General Thek had openly challenged the Emperor's authority. Ben saw hands moving toward weapons on both sides of the divide. In that moment of stunned silence, Princess Kira stepped forward from her position near the throne. She walked deliberately toward Ben, her face a mask of royal composure. The entire court watched her movement, unsure what the princess intended to do. Ben trusted Kira completely, but as she approached him with determined steps, he felt his heart racing. This was the moment they had planned for, but seeing her royal bearing and serious expression made it feel terrifyingly real. Princess Kira stopped directly in front of Ben, close enough that their conversation could be heard by the nearest nobles. She looked into his eyes for just a moment, a look that conveyed love, apology, and determination all at once. Then she drew back her arm and struck him across the face with enough force that the sound echoed throughout the silent hall. Ben staggered backward, his cheek burning from the impact. The entire court gasped in shock. Even General Thek looked stunned by this unexpected development. Ben straightened himself and looked at Princess Kira, waiting for whatever came next. For several heartbeats, no one moved or spoke. Then Princess Kira turned to face the assembled court, her voice carrying clearly through the vast hall. I performed the strike of honor, she declared in formal, ritual tones that every Zirian present would recognize. I strike the one whose life is worth more than my own. The effect on the court was immediate and dramatic. Every Xerian noble dropped to one knee in recognition of the ancient ceremony. Even General Thek's supporters found themselves kneeling automatically, trained by centuries of tradition. By the ancient laws of our people, Princess Kira continued, I declare that Ambassador Ben Reed of Earth has shown courage, honor, and selfless dedication to the protection of both our worlds. His willingness to risk everything to expose treachery and save our alliance makes him worthy of the highest protection our tradition can offer. She turned back to Ben, her voice softening slightly but still carrying to every corner of the hall. You came to us as a stranger and chose to trust us with your people's most precious secrets. When you discovered betrayal, you risked your own safety and the alliance itself to protect both our worlds from treachery. You have shown that honor and courage are not limited by the planet of one's birth. General Thek struggled to his feet, his face showing confusion and growing alarm as he realized how the situation had shifted. Your Highness, he protested, this human has made wild accusations against loyal Xerian officers. He seeks to divide us with unfounded conspiracy theories. Princess Kira looked at him with cold disdain. General, I have reviewed the communications records you thought were secure. I have documented evidence of your planned betrayal, your conspiracy to overthrow my father, and your treasonous correspondence with off-world commanders. She produced a data crystal that glowed with official royal seals. Everything is here. Your plans to steal human technology, void the alliance, and establish military rule over Xerion. Did you really think the Royal Intelligence Service would miss such obvious treachery? The remaining support for General Thek crumbled visibly as nobles and military officers distanced themselves from the exposed conspiracy. Ben realized that Kira had been conducting her own investigation parallel to theirs, gathering legal evidence while he provided the public revelation needed to expose the plot. By performing the Strike of Honor, Princess Kira announced, I place Ambassador Reed under royal protection. Any attack against him is now an attack against the crown itself. Any attempt to harm the alliance he represents is treason against Xerion. Emperor Voss rose from his throne, his expression showing both pride in his daughter and anger at the betrayal she had exposed. General Thek, the Emperor said formally, you and your co-conspirators are hereby charged with treason, conspiracy to commit military coup, and betrayal of sworn allies. You will be detained pending full investigation. General Thek made one last desperate attempt to regain control. This is madness. You're placing alien interests above Xerion survival. No, Emperor Voss replied firmly. We're placing honor above fear, cooperation above isolation, and truth above treachery. That is how Xerion has survived for millennia, and it is how we will survive the coming storm. Royal guards moved to arrest General Thek and the officers who had supported him. The conspiracy that had threatened to destroy the alliance crumbled in minutes once exposed to the light of public scrutiny. Ben looked around the hall, still somewhat stunned by how quickly everything had changed. The strike from Princess Kira still stung on his cheek, but he understood now why it had been necessary. In Xerion culture, the Strike of Honor was more than ceremony, it was a legally binding declaration of protection that even traitors could not ignore. Princess Kira approached him again, this time with the gentle smile he had grown to love rather than the formal mask of royal authority. I apologize for the necessity of the strike, she said softly. But it was the only way to protect you and preserve the alliance under our laws. I understand, Ben replied, touching his still stinging cheek. Though I admit it left me speechless for a moment there. That was rather the point, she said with a small laugh. Emperor Voss joined them, his expression warm with approval. Ben, your courage tonight has saved both our peoples. You risked everything to expose the treachery that threatened our alliance. Your Majesty, I simply did what I thought was right. Both our worlds deserve leaders who put protection of innocent lives above political advantage. Indeed they do. Which is why I believe you and my daughter will serve both our peoples well in the years to come. As the evening continued, Ben found himself surrounded by nobles who now openly supported the alliance. The crisis had cleared away the uncertainty and suspicion that had clouded the early negotiations. Those who remained were genuinely committed to working together against the Void Swarm. Later that night, as the celebration wound down, Ben stood with Princess Kira on her private balcony overlooking the city. The 3 moons hung overhead, casting silver light on a world that now felt truly welcoming. "So what happens next?" Ben asked. "Next, we plan a wedding that will unite our peoples in truth as well as symbol," Kira replied, taking his hand. "Then we prepare our combined fleets to face the greatest threat either of our worlds has ever known. And we do it together." "Together," she agreed, leaning against his shoulder as they watched the stars wheel overhead. The Void Swarm was still coming, but now humanity and Xerion would meet it as true allies, their bond sealed not just by treaties and political necessity, but by love, trust, and the ancient honor of 2 peoples who had chosen to stand together against the dark. Ben touched his cheek where the strike had landed and smiled. He would carry that mark proudly as a symbol of the moment when courage and honor overcame fear and betrayal, saving 2 worlds and creating something beautiful from the ashes of conspiracy. The alliance would survive, and so would they all.